Hello, Bronze Brigade. Welcome to the show. I am your host, Christopher, aka the Bronze Age Nerd, and today we have a very cool show. This Hotshot Comics controversy, the Asheville comic story, has been just crazy to learn about as we've gotten more and more details, and it's still an ongoing story with a lot of twists and turns and issues that we need to kind of get into, a lot of these details. So one of the things that I wanted to do is, now that some legal action's been taken, I wanted to talk to somebody who's actually been involved in the situation. So we're going to be joined by a little bit and a guest here that is going to be somebody who's going to shed some light on some stuff that happened. Real fast, I'm going to say hi to the people that are popping into the chat. We got Buddy holding it down. What's up, Buddy? Brandon, yeah, I mean, we definitely can see where that would be the case for sure. Tinfoil at Nick, Kingdom of Nerds. Thanks for joining, everybody. We are going to bring our guest in right now. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to say hello to Brad Weinkopf. Hello, Brad.
Hey, how are you?
Fantastic. Thanks for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it. Awesome. So I think a lot of people are out there wondering, they've seen my video, they've seen some other coverage on it. They've maybe seen some of the people that were affected talking about it here and there, but no one's really had kind of a where did this all start? Like, how did that happen to them kind of story told that I've seen out there. So I was curious if you could kind of go back to the beginning for us.
Sure.
And tell us where this kind of, snowball started rolling, basically.
Yeah, definitely. So I've been collecting comic books since probably the early 80s. And my dad took us around the United States, and every state we went to every comic book store in every state. And I just held on to them for that whole time. And then I saw that I heard about the grading company, and I didn't really know too much about it. But I wanted to have some of these old comic books graded, a modern Bronze Age. And so I looked up Asheville Comics and on Google. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to take like 9 comics here and then see what it's about. And so I walked in, met Doug, and he was a smooth talker. He's like, yeah, I'll take your comics, get them graded. And he really told me that he had no idea when we'd get them back, but it was within like 6 months to 8 months. He said they're really behind. I'm like, all right, that's fine. So I paid him, it was like $240 or something.
Okay.
And so a year passed. And I emailed him. I'm like, Doug, where are my comics? And he just always shot it off to where it's the CGC's fault. They still have your comics. They take a long time to grade. I'm like, well, all right. Then about a year and a half went by. Sent him another email. Where are my comics? This is crazy. And the same exact thing, same runaround. And now now it's been almost 2 years. October will be 2 years since
October will be 2 years. Okay.
Yeah. October 2021 is when I dropped them off.
Okay. Now, and that's an awesome setup for a terrible situation.
Yeah.
But I do want to go back to that a little bit. So,
sure.
So you look up the shop. You're kind of curious about this whole grading process,
right? You
kind of just look up comic shops, and that's a local comic shop, obviously, for you, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm just curious, and there's no judgment behind any of these questions. It might sound like it, but actually what it is there's a lot of people that say, oh, well, the people that did this should have done this, or they should have done that. But you're saying, you're pretty new to this. You just hear about grading. You think it sounds like a good idea.
Yeah. And I've had these comics for, 40 years, you know, and I've got probably, 1,000 comics or more just sitting around. And I was like, all right, well, Look how much this is going for on eBay. Graded. Oh my God.
Right. Oh, for sure. So you did do some like pricing kind of like checking out stuff like that. Okay.
Yeah.
Have you done any research on submitting comics yourself or anything like that? Or were you kind of like, I'm gonna have somebody else do it?
I did not. And that's my own fault. And I should have done my research, but I was like, hey, I'll just pay somebody and they can do it for me, basically.
And I understand that, like, there's a lot of people that I think they're playing armchair quarterback on people that went through this whole thing with Doug.
Yeah.
And I think it's easy to do if you've been submitting comics for years and collecting. You're like, why wouldn't you just do it yourself? Well,
yeah,
you don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
And you think the shop can do it for you. Like,
I mean,
handle it, right?
Really, it's watching a YouTube clip. But back then I just was like, I just want to have it. I just want to do it.
Right.
I don't mind paying a little bit of money to have it done. And he was going to press them for me. He was going to press a few of the other comics for me. And I paid him for that and got them back. And I honestly do not think they were pressed at all.
Okay.
But that's another story.
Well, I mean, yeah, but it definitely interesting. I was going to ask about pressing because we'll talk about the books in a second. These are books that I think most collectors be like, hey, you should probably press those before you send them in. If there's, any books of age are probably going to have pressable defects.
Right.
Real fast, I do want to say, Pielight Tinfoil Hat Nick's comment here. The standard answer we were told to give was at least 6 months, and it's always CGC's fault. Now, for those who don't know, Tinfoil Hat Nick was an employee at Asheville Comics.
Mm-hmm.
So, when they're saying that, that's coming from their experiences there as an employee.
It's probably an AI just recorded. The recorded guy saying that.
So speaking about the books, and you're talking about bronze, modern. I think you maybe a little underselling it a little bit here. There's some really big key books. That we're going to get submitted. Do you have the list handy? Can you kind of go through?
I don't, but I can get them right quick. I mean, if you have the document in front of you, that's why I'm using my phone. Otherwise, I could.
Oh, for sure. Let me see if I
could bring it up real quick.
Because I do have a full.
But I know it's like ASM 300, 129, Transformers 1, Wolverine 1, one with I forget the numbers, but that's basically a majority of them.
Right. And I mean, especially like ASM 129, first Punisher, first full appearance of Venom, and ASM 300. I mean, those are big books.
Yeah, and they were in pretty decent shape.
Yeah, if you only have a handful of books and don't plan on making it a regular thing, it's so much easier to have someone else handle it. And especially when that's a huge key too. When you say that Doug was going to press them, or at least some of them, or whatever. Yeah, I think it's really common for a lot of us, if we're going to have a press our books, we often say, okay, then ship them off to CGC.
Yeah, and that's something that you would normally do in your home. You have to actually get a nice presser. You have to do a lot of research to press comics.
Right, especially value. You're not going to start out on ASM 129.
No, absolutely not.
And so you mentioned you go into the shop, and he was a smooth talker. Was that through this whole process, you follow up with email, was that primarily your only in-person interaction with him, or did you go back to the
that was
shop
it?
At any point? Okay.
Yep. Except when I went to the store asking where my comics were within that year, or a year and a couple of months. And they were like, you have to talk to Doug. Doug's not here. Getting the runaround, basically.
Yeah, I think there's a Secret Wars 8 in there too, right?
Oh, yeah. Yep, that's right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry, I should have had that list pulled up for some reason.
No, it's okay.
But yeah. So he remembers when they came in and the Wolverine 1 was there, and they sat there for months.
Yep.
Yikes. So, I think a lot of people are kind of wondering in chat, probably watching and waiting, because we the thumbnail and all that says court, and there's the court case here.
Yes.
So we're going to be talking about, it's coming up on 2 years here in October. At some point, you clearly got fed up with the process and the runaround, right?
Correct. So what happened was I fix computers for a living, and I'm an on-site company. So I go to these people's houses and fix their computer. And this older lady, I told her the story, and she was like an ex-lawyer, private investigator. And I had told her the guy's name, and she just went down the rabbit hole and brought me so much information about this guy. I'm like, holy Jesus, what the heck? What's going on? And then she said, hey, have you checked out this video on YouTube? And it was Zach's video about getting scammed with twig number 1. And I was like, no, but I'll watch it. And then I watched it and then reached out to him. And then that's where it all just snowballed, making a private Facebook group about being scammed. And then after I talked to her and she found all of this information, I was like, well, screw that. I'm not going to wait any longer if this is an actual scam, after reading thousands of people that went through the same thing on either eBay, paying for something they didn't get. So I was like, I'm just going to take them to court. So I went to the police station and filed a police report. And right off the bat, they're like, you can go to the magistrate office and they can issue a warrant right off the bat. I'm like, done.
Was that because of the value of the
because it was like 10,000 or over. Yeah.
And just that's a really important point. It was over $10,000. So for people that are kind of like,
that's wide range, because if they're graded,
right.
8.5 or above is what I think I said, or 9. I didn't go like, oh, they're all 9.8.
Right,
that's just ridiculous.
Well, it would have been much more than $10,000.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah, pretty. I think it's having seen the list, and again, I don't have it in front of me, but that's a pretty fair estimation, somewhere in that range at least.
Yeah.
For people that are kind of like wondering, like, because there's a lot of people, the Hotshot issue is synonymous with this whole 9/8 pre-order on like books.
That's what I've heard. Yeah. And I had no idea what Hotshot Comics was until I met Zach.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of that other interesting thing is you have these two names, and there's people that are locally being affected by Asheville comics and the different shops and stuff.
Right.
And then there's this whole Hotshot thing, and they're not necessarily connecting the dots if they don't know those are the same business and the same person.
Right. So I went to the magistrate office and started going through the whole thing, of filling out all the paperwork to get a warrant out for him. And then the actual magistrate came out and looked at the book that I had, of all the stuff, of what happened to me, the complaints, all that kind of stuff. And she's like, well, you just need to go to court, and you can go to small claims court, you can go to civil court. You just need to do that first. And I'm like, all right, well, and then I went to the courthouse, talked to the clerk of court, and she gave me all the options. And I thought the best option for me was small claims. And so it wasn't, that much money. It was like $120, I think, to file. And then, so we did that. And then in that meantime of the date that they gave me for court, I went and met all the people that own comic book stores around in Asheville, and it happens that they're all women owned, and they all had some kind of dealings with Doug in the past. Either they worked for him, or they had a comic book store that Doug set up right next to him and tried to push him out of Asheville, or it's just like all kinds of crazy stuff. And so when the court date came, they all came with me to court, which was really awesome. And I got to meet them one-on-one.
No, that is a really cool, like, I hate to call it like a bonding experience, but I mean, it's kind of probably what it was, right? Like
we were calling ourselves the Justice League of Asheville.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was so cool. And we were like walking in there all, just like big-headed and had a big ego. So we get there and he didn't show up. So we talked to the lady, and she's like, the sheriff couldn't find him. She didn't know where he was. The address that you put on the file, which is a home address supposedly of his, that was on his background check. And so we're like, well, they can issue it again, and they'll try to find him again. So we gave him the address of the actual baseball card shop and comic book shop, because his daughter, who has a restraining order on him, said he's living at the baseball card shop. And I was like, all right, well, we'll put that down. And apparently a couple of times the sheriff would come and he would like jet out the back. But they got him and served him.
Nice.
Which was very nice.
Top, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Also real fast, I want to kind of explain that too, because that's another one of those details it's a little confusing if you're kind of just catching up with the story. So, correct me if I'm mistaken here, but there's currently only one shop that he operates actively, and that is technically Asheville Cards, right?
Correct. After we started this whole endeavor, he shut down the Asheville Comics.
Right.
And it looks like, from what people have driven by and taken a picture of the strip mall that it's in, and it looks like he moved the card shop, which was 2 doors down from the comic book store, over to where the comic book store was, and it's because it's much bigger.
Right.
So now it's just Asheville Cards.
Okay. So people are like, well, card shop and comic books, but yeah, it's basically, he had at one point, I think 3 active shops. Maybe there was comics cards, and then there was another comics location that eventually got turned into a horror store that sold like Scream and Friday the 13th and Halloween type stuff or whatever.
Yeah.
I had some definitely a diverse business plan, but he's primarily operating in the sports card space now, and talking about submitting cards to PSA, and
that's what I saw.
Submitting customers cards to PSA, and not CGC for some reason, which is, I guess we can kind of all figure out why.
He was banned from there.
Okay, so the first court date, they can't serve Doug, so he doesn't show up to the court date. Then they finally do get him served papers, and the second court date was already set at that point, right?
They set it while we were all there,
and that was just a couple days ago.
It was
the
set
date
for the second. Yep.
So the second. Okay, so does anything happen leading up to that court date? Any other contact or anything like that, or does it just go straight to that court date?
No, we just waited our time.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So that court date rolls around, and we get to the kind of D-Day here. So what ends up happening?
He shows up, and we go into the court. I'm dressed in a tie, nice suit. He's dressed in blue jeans, bright green shoes, and a flannel. And I have my book with me, which is all the culmination of all the stuff I have on him. An F rating at the Better Business Bureau. I accumulated like thousands of the 1-star comments from Google, Reddit, YouTube, Facebook, the Better Business Bureau, and I put that all into one document with his background, his criminal background, which he had, I think, 12 criminal cases dating back to 1975.
Wow.
Yeah. But mostly they were like traffic infractions or, but there's a lot of other stuff that cyber stalking and all this other kind of stuff.
Larceny.
So and I had this and the first page, of course, was exactly what I went through, my email comments to him and his responses. And then I had listed exactly what comics I had and what they sold for on eBay at this time.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And so
at like a whatever grade I said 9.0 or something, 8.5.
Right.
Whatever I could find.
So, for me, for example, I'm not a very well versed on court procedures, but watching like People's Court or something like that. There's the defendant, there's the plaintiff, and
right. And it was just us. There's nobody else in the room.
Okay. Yeah.
So I went first. He said, "Come on up," and then I just told him exactly what I just told you, and then he said, "Do you have evidence?" And I gave him the book, and he flipped through the book for like, I don't know, a good 10 minutes. And right then I was like thinking to myself, that's it. Because Doug didn't have anything but the emails that we had exchanged, and that was it.
Right, which you also had. So
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So Doug comes up, and he's like, "Tell your side of the story." And it was basically what I just told you. I came in, I gave him the comics, and then he blamed the CGC. And then the bombshell was, and I owe the CGC $50,000. And I'm like, whoa. So if they send them back to you, I'm never seeing my comic books again if you owe them that much. And then he started saying that, Brad started a hate group on Facebook about me and all these other sites bashing me. And the judge was like, I could care less. And I'm like, yes. And I'm like, and to myself, of course, I'm just like, it's a victims group, buddy. You might hate it. That makes it a hate group because you hate it, but but it's a victims group.
Yeah, if you want to not have that, there's a really good way to prevent that. It's don't piss off a bunch of people by screwing them over and
Yeah,
you know,
all over the
band
world,
together.
not just here. I mean, I saw some people in Australia, like like other countries. It was
That's
crazy.
crazy. It is
But
absolutely
eBay reaches the world, not just here.
Yeah, yeah, and again, a lot of it was on eBay. Talk about like dividing it out amongst, you know, in person, the website, and eBay.
Yeah,
Pretty ridiculous. Okay,
Yeah.
so he hears Doug's side of the story. He couldn't care less about his excuses.
Yeah, exactly. And then I stayed in the courtroom and told the judge or magistrate or whoever he was that I wanted to stay in there because I didn't want to walk out with him. And he's like, I don't blame you. I'm like, good. I'm glad you got to see my book, and hopefully that makes up your mind. And he's like, yeah, it's pretty much already made up. And so I will send you a letter on Friday in the mail, USPS.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, that sounds good. So I walked out and we talked with all the other people that were there, and then got the letter on Friday, and it said I won.
Nice. Well, congratulations, man. That is such a harrowing, you know, like to hand over those books, to have them just be in limbo this long. And it's, you know, I think a lot of us during you know, the COVID pandemic, the slowdowns at CGC, a lot of us experienced slowdowns at CGC. So it was reasonable up to a point, potentially reasonable.
Right.
And then clearly it became something else.
Well, when we talked to the CGC, and they're like, yeah, we have a vault with his name on it with, I don't know how many comics, but $50,000 worth of submissions.
Yeah.
So you can do the math. What is it? $25 a book?
Well, and
times
some of
30.
those books may have been more, because if they were a higher value book, then that might bump up the fee on the book. But it sounds like the vast majority of stuff that he was submitting was, $25 a pop, $20 a pop, depending on when it was submitted. But that adds up. Very slowly, actually. So it's a lot of books.
I know. I can't believe they let it go on for that long. I mean, I don't understand, because now you have to pay before you even submit anything.
Right. Yeah, which it kind of makes you wonder with some of the stuff that they're dealing with. I have to wonder if some of that's in reaction to things like this.
Sure. Somebody's getting fired.
The standard fee was 25 to 30, but we're talking about CGC's side. Is that, you told us what you paid with pressing and everything, which sounded reasonable. If it was a legitimate business. Right. So, you know, I have to ask, you went through all that, and again, congratulations on winning the judgment. Now I assume the hard part is they're going to have to try to collect the money from him.
Right. So I went down there Monday, and they're like, and I was like, I'm here to get what's called a writ of execution. And they're like, you are jumping the gun, son. Like, you have to wait 10 days before you can do that, because he could appeal the thing. And so I was like, all right, cool. So they gave me all the paperwork, and now I just have to wait and fill it out. And what that actually does is I'm assuming from what I've read, they give it to a sheriff. The sheriff goes in, and he has the right to write down anything that he doesn't want to use as assets. And then they can go to the store and collect whatever they want as collateral and seize it. And then and then they would sell it at a sheriff's auction, I would assume. And then I would get my money that way.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It makes me, like, the thought that I instantly have when you say that is, we don't know how many books he's holding at that location.
Right.
That belong to other people, you know?
And the thing is the reason I went so quickly is because he probably clear out that shop in no time, you know?
Yeah.
And they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have anything in here but a couple of shitty baseball cards.
Right. Yeah. I've got all these early 90s baseball cards.
Yeah. Some tops. I got some gum for you too. It's from the 80s.
It might be the only real product he ever handed out. Um,
Right.
but yeah, it's so wow. And of course, you know, I'm not going to go dive too much into it to respect privacy, but I am in the group you're talking about on Facebook and able to kind of see the other stories. There is another case, which is a simple larceny case that's being brought against him.
And we went today, me and her and his daughter went and met this lady that he stole her wallet at the Ingalls, which is a grocery store here in North Carolina.
Wow.
Apparently, from what she said, like he distracted her with a shopping cart or hit her or something, and she had left her wallet on the car maybe, or in the shopping cart, and then he took it. And she was beside herself. She's like, what? Because she didn't realize it until later, and she had just gone to the ATM to get $500 because she was going to a funeral. And, yeah. And so she didn't have the money for the funeral. So whatever she was donating or getting for the funeral or something. And her wallet was missing and all her credit cards. And so she went back to Ingalls, and they're like, well, there's not much we can do with cash. And they're like, she's like, I went to the ATM. It's on camera because every ATM has a camera. And Ingalls has cameras in the parking lot. So they're like, all right, well, we'll call the cops. And the cops come, and I'm assuming they looked at the video, and she was like going to say, you know, well, if it's a homeless person, he probably needed it more than I did. And she was just going to let it go and not press charges. And the cops.
Oh, Brad, if you're able. Guy. Oh, there you go. You lost it for a second.
Yeah, we know this guy, and he owns a local business here in Asheville. And so it would be in your best interest to press charges. So she did. And then today was just an arraignment to where if he shows up, he needs to tell the judge if he's going to represent himself or get a lawyer. And we didn't need to be there. After we found out after being there for an hour. So they gave her a card, which I have, with a QR code, and you just scan the QR code and it tells you when your next court date is.
Okay. Wow. So she thinks he's a homeless guy and is like, yeah, you know, whatever. Despite the fact that she's going to a funeral.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure she wasn't happy, obviously, but she's probably like, well, there's not much you can do about it. But then she finds out it's this owner of this card shop / comic.
And apparently he was using her credit cards until she cut them off.
Yeah. Oh, that'll be Hotshot's next IG excuse post. Everyone's books got seized by the sheriff, and I can't send them back to you now. Oh man, great comment, Wilbert. Yeah, and that's the thing is, you know, I part of the reason I'm staying on this. I'm not letting go on this one because there are constant posts refuting claims made, and there is, frankly, confusion from CGC on the matter. Yeah, because we've had this kind of back and forth with CGC. I've been doing my due diligence to reach out to CGC and get a comment from somebody that's above, you know,
Good. I was hoping somebody would, because I'm kind of in the dark. I haven't reached out to them though. Because we submitted these forms like a month ago.
Yeah,
and I haven't heard anything.
Well, and so just to kind of catch people up, and I will be doing a follow-up video because there's a lot of minor details that add up that I want to cover. This isn't really the right venue for that, but I will talk about this one element of it. People submitted claim forms to CGC if they were affected by the Asheville / Hotshot situation, and for weeks, you know, it looked smooth. It looked like, you know, CGC was getting those forms. They were replying that, you know, for people that were asking, don't worry, we'll send you your books back to you. Yeah. And then kind of overnight that flipped. The thread was locked on CGC's forums by the moderator. He posted a comment saying, you know, to correct my previous comments, essentially they're working with Hotshot to fulfill those books. Right. And it started to kind of match up with some of the story that Doug had been putting out there in the narrative, at least on the surface level, from what we could tell, which is, you know, scary because what we're talking about here is the difference between let's say somebody like Brad, let's say they had his books at CGC, and instead of sending them back to Brad, which is, a very secure, you're at the mercy of UPS and FedEx, just like everybody is, but it's a fairly secure way to send the books back, of course, to potentially sending the books back to Asheville Cards now, or Doug. And then think about this. If he has $50,000 in books at CGC, think about the shipping costs that he would have to come up with the funds to deliver those books out to everybody.
Yeah.
They're already paid for.
They're already paid for. Exactly.
Yeah. And who knows what he did with the money in the meantime, but it's not like he has some ability to collect extra money from people to ship them out.
Yeah.
And I don't think many people would want to do that.
Yeah.
So
I emailed the CGC when I found that out, and I'm like, I am not dealing with this guy, Doug, ever again. And I sent them the criminal background check that I did that has like the 12 criminal cases.
Good.
And I was like, I'm not dealing with this guy. And what I thought was funny in the court case, Doug had mentioned that the comic books are his property until he ships them back to you. I'm like, no, they're my comics. They've always been my comics. They're not your comics just because I gave them to you to have graded. That is one of those weird parts. That's where I'm worried, because between him and CGC, I think that might actually be true. Yeah. Because he's submitting the books, and I think there is this concern that legally they can't send the books back to the individuals that didn't pay for it. Right.
I mean, I hope that there's a way around that given the situation, but that does seem to be.
I mean, I guess he's the one that submitted them, but I don't know. It's just that's a fine-edged sword right there. Like,
it absolutely
is his property or the person who actually owns them?
And I think, when you get down to it legally, it becomes a little bit more complicated as far as that goes. Like, now, I think most of us will plainly say, well, obviously the comic books belong to the people that turned them over to him to submit to CGC. He was the third party, but I have a feeling that once the lawyers get involved, it can get a little complicated, unfortunately.
I can just see at the CGC. Do you have that receipt that you bought that comic book back in 1982?
Well, and that's another point. So that's what question I wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
When you went to the shop and you submitted those books, did you get a receipt?
Just a paper receipt, but nothing with the written comics on it. The only evidence that I have of that is from all the emails that I sent.
Okay, so the paper was literally just
referring to that, and I have my bank statement, of it coming out of my bank statement of him charging me.
But there was no
there's no itemized statement. No.
So then it gets tough because
he didn't believe it.
He bought.
So he's like, no,
he bought some cards or something, right? Like, it definitely is a dicey situation, and I'm sorry that everyone's still dealing with it. I'm sorry we don't have more clarification. I'm working on it. I am working to try to get CGC to kind of answer some high level questions. I have a theory that I will float out there, which might be that they're trying to get those payments from Doug.
Yeah.
And I wonder if they're sort of stringing him along to get those payments from him as much as they can before he realizes that, well, I'm not getting anything. I should stop paying them anything.
Right. He told the judge he gave him $12,000 already.
Yeah. Because there's this big goal where he was trying to get 25% of the amount owed to them before they would start sending him books. And then at some point, even in communication he released, they're saying now that he needs to release all that money to them before they send him any books. And it gets dicey.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what to think about that, but if they're trying to get that money, then that, by all intents and purposes, go for it.
So Wilbert has a great question here for you, Brad. Has CGC indicated to you at all that they have your particular books? They should stand out from the 9/8 pre-screen stuff. Just curious.
No.
Okay. So they can't confirm, or they won't confirm that they actually have your stuff.
Absolutely not. They're in a vault with 50,000 other books.
Okay. Yeah, I wondered about that. Yeah, that's the Ponzi scheme comment is one that comes up a lot with this situation. I mean, taking money and then not holding it to fulfill the services you promised, and using that money to ostensibly do other stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not good.
No, not good at all.
And I think he was saying in one of his threads that, he has to buy product for the store so people come in and buy it.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's a lame ass excuse, man.
I mean, you definitely, if you're a business and you're trying to still operate, yeah, but you don't use the funds you collected for that for
right.
it. And that's something I covered, I think, in my follow-up video where, I mean, if you look at his eBay account, you can see the feedback from people he's bought from. Yeah. And there's tons of transactions. He was actively spending a lot of money on eBay from that account. So, and it was mostly sports cards, and that's what he said in his post, to be fair. But yeah, so if anybody in chat has any questions for Brad, I know he's got something kind of coming up he's going to need to hop off for in a little bit, but I want to make sure we have a chance to have any questions addressed if there are any. So, for you, you're kind of waiting for the to be made whole essentially after this.
Right.
Kind of waiting to see what happens with, maybe CGC hopefully having your books, which would be the best of both worlds there if you were able to get made whole and get your books back.
Yeah, I'm not going to hold my breath, but we'll see.
So yeah, do you have any thoughts on this for anybody that you want to share with anybody out there? If people that have been affected, anything you want to tell them?
Just whenever you make yourself present on the internet and eBay, do your homework. Because for me, I shouldn't have to do my homework on a local brick and mortar store that I walk into. But for people that purchase things online on eBay or wherever it is, do your homework of that person, how many reviews they have. Just do your due diligence and protect yourself that way.
Yeah, 100%. I don't know if Brad will know the answer to this, but it is a good question if we know if he's up on his rent at the store.
I do not know that.
Yeah, it's one of those things that it's possible I might be able to find that out. But
all I know is what his daughter said today. He's got her cats at the store and she wants them back.
Well, and that's actually, it's hilarious. That's one of the things I mentioned in my first video is one of the Google reviews was talking about how the place smelled like cat piss.
Oh God, really?
God. And it's like, I've never been to a comic shop that smelled like cat piss before. It's like, and then I coupled that with the fact that we kind of knew through channels that he was living at the store. And he has cats, so there you go. Can you explain how he stated he was spending and buying even more on eBay to get out of the situation? Yeah, so I do believe that comment he made on IG was related to me pointing out that he's spending money on eBay, or at least other people pointing that out maybe. And he posted like a Investopedia image, like trying to basically condescendingly explain how business works. Like,
oh, that's right. I remember
spend money to make money.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, we all know. You also need to give people what you sold them. That's another part of the situation that you have to consider.
I forgot to mention that Judge Judy reached out to us.
That's a good point.
That was a big thing.
Yeah.
But that went nowhere because they couldn't find him.
Is that why it went nowhere?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'm speculating, but I'm sure they tried to send him emails or call him, send him letters to a address that he doesn't live at anymore because they're not sending it to the actual store.
Right, that makes sense. So he wouldn't even.
I would assume they just couldn't get a hold of him.
It's essentially it's like Wikipedia, but for like business 101. Essentially, is the best way I can describe it. Comic Journey.
Right. And now I'm just waiting for Netflix to call.
Right, that's the next step, right?
Yeah, that's the next step.
I do want to ask about that. So how did the whole Judge Judy ball start rolling?
They sent me a letter in the mail, FedEx overnight. And so, and then I opened it up. I'm like, this has got to be a scam, but scammers aren't going to pay for overnight FedEx package,
Right.
And then I set up a call, and the executive producer called, and I told them the story, and they're like, this is it. This is what we want. I'm like, all right, go for it. But then when I pitched it in our group, they're like, don't do it because he would get off scot-free.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I get paid. And they're like, it doesn't matter. We just need to hold him accountable for his actions and things like that, which makes sense. But it still would have been nice to have been flown out to California and stayed at the Beverly Hills like hotel and had a limo.
Wilbert's comment here is and by the way, I was one of those voices. I'll just say it. I was one of those voices that said you probably shouldn't do that. But from Wilbert's perspective, yeah, he should have agreed to do Judge Judy because the payoff and the judgments are part of the TV production. So
exactly.
People that aren't
he
familiar,
gets paid like some kind of fee.
Right. So the way it works, for people who aren't familiar, is your case is basically taken out of the real court system, and it is put into a TV show where both sides, do their. We've all seen the show on that part of it.
But they said it's legally binding.
It's legally binding, but there's no legal repercussions for somebody if they lose.
Right.
It doesn't go on their record, and at the same time, they don't even pay. Now, the flip side, like you're saying, of course, is that you would have gotten paid if you'd won at least
within 30 days.
Right. So it is. I can totally understand from your situation. And to play devil's advocate, other people pointed out like, well, it would at least bring some national attention to the situation.
Oh my God. Yeah. He would have been embarrassed on national TV. And that if they did get in touch with him, he was probably thinking that I don't want to get embarrassed on national TV.
Oh, there's a good point. Cause he used to live in California. There might be reasons why he couldn't even go back to California.
Oh, maybe. I know he lived in Florida. I didn't know he lived in California.
So Sammy wants to know about finding the Facebook page. Do you want to talk about that? Because I don't want to.
I have no idea.
Okay.
It's secret. You got. It's a secret society. You have to go through the initiation of Doug.
Yeah, and it is. So what I will tell you, if anybody out there was genuinely affected by Hotshot or Asheville or any of the Doug businesses, reach out to me and I will vet you and make sure that because the problem is there are people in there that are kind of wanting to just watch and see what happens, which trust me, I'll keep you updated on any of the major goings on that happen.
Right. And
a lot of it comes
back with his weekly collection or
collecting weekly, which I should edit this show afterwards and put that in the link. In the
for sure.
Speaking of in the description, by the way, Brad has been awesome with his time. He's been awesome coming here and helping us out. You mentioned earlier you run a computer repair and solutions business. I did put the link for that business. If anybody is looking for some help with that, if you think Brad's a cool guy and you want to go help support him,
remote assistance all over the world.
There you go. And I think that's really awesome. So if anybody's looking for any kind of tech services, hit up Brad if you're in the market. Doug is always the victim. So I do want to be respectful of your time. I know you have another thing going on after this.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I appreciate this.
You're welcome on anytime if there's any updates or anything you want to talk about.
Sure.
We'd love to get the information out there for people so more people can be aware of this scam and other scams like it. So, all right. Thanks a lot, Brad. I hope you have a wonderful time.
Appreciate it. Nice seeing you.
All right. So I didn't see any other questions coming through that were specific for Brad. So that's the reason that I let him go, because I know he's going and doing something after this show. I will try to go through if there's anybody. Let me see if there's any other questions here. I think that guy's beyond being ashamed of embarrassment. He's also crucified in public. Yeah. So for me, I didn't think it was a good idea for him to go on People's Court or Judge Judy or whatever it's called these days. Here's the other thing. I feel like the show just thought like, comic books. That's a novelty. I don't think they were going to like take it seriously from a production approach. Like I can't imagine Judy taking comic books too seriously. And yeah, he would have been ashamed by that. Realistically, how many people would have seen it that would have actually been comic book collectors? Just my opinion. And in the end, he won the case. Brad won the case in a real court, which is definitely better. So Sammy says, after your video, I've reached out to CGC and they have not responded. Okay. Sammy, hit me up on IG or literally, Twitter, whatever they call it now, Facebook, my Discord server, my email address is in the about page if you want to email me that way. I know you're a person that's been in the community for a long time. So if you're legit affected by this, let me know. So that's a big part of the reason that I'm trying to get a hold of somebody at CGC. I know people who know Matt Nelson. They've reached out to him. I've reached out to Hashan Patel, which is the VP of CGC. I am really trying to get people who have not, there's people who have not heard back from CGC. That's what's going on here. That's the main thing. Now, I do have some other questions that are related to this for them that will hopefully get some answers for people that were affected. But to have multiple people who have had multiple submissions and they've submitted the form to CGC, or they haven't heard back about getting the form from CGC, like the clock is ticking. CGC said they're going to take, I think it was 90 days or so to review this. And we're already like at least about a month through that process, I think. And look, maybe CGC is busy and they'll get back to all these people. But the weird thing is some people will email CGC and right away they hear back, like within a day. Rob's Fat Stacks, great community member here. When he saw my video, he emailed CGC and he got the claim form that night. There are other people in the community that have emailed CGC and they still haven't heard back, and they emailed before he did. So I'm just trying to get those people in touch so they can get their claim forms in and at least, be part of the pool of books that I'm sure CGC is looking to line up. Like, okay, what books do we have? Who do they technically belong to? They can tell if the book was submitted by Doug, but they can't tell who actually owns the book. And if they can match up enough of those, maybe that would help encourage them to send the books directly back to the customers as opposed to sending them back to Doug, because they can say like, hey, we can account for most of these books and we know who they belong to. Yeah, please do, man. I wasn't trying to give you a hard time. It's just there's been a few looky-loos in that group. And like I was invited in to help kind of, keep an eye on the situation, but I don't want it to turn into just a bunch of looky-loos. Hey, E-Man, I missed this. I'll watch this on the rewind. Yeah, it's definitely a fascinating topic. I do want to make sure. I have doubts Brad will ever be made whole. This Doug guy owes way too many people. He has the nuclear bankruptcy option and will end up screwing. I wonder about that as well. I really do wonder about that as well. With several people approaching a legal option with him, I do hope that he at least faces legal repercussions that will show up on his record beyond just bankruptcy. I wonder about things he will do in the future with like cards. Funko Pops was another area he was reaching out to people to submit to him for grading and stuff like that too. So he's definitely I won't say he's trying this with other collectibles, but he's active with other collectibles markets and trying to submit stuff. So yeah, it is definitely interesting. Rudy, thanks for joining the show. Right. Yeah, he has done the bankruptcy thing before too, for sure. Yes, there's a lot of horror stories, but the reason I'm like balking on your comment here, Beowulf, is there's a lot of people that, when I made that video, that kind of victim shamed a little bit people that did submit their comic books. I'm not saying you're doing that. It just sort of, I just want to point out, like Brad said, like he, hey, I didn't know what was doing. I figured a comic shop would be the person. Like people that go to sell their comic book collections. Selling your comic book collection, usually going to an LCS, is not the best way to do that, but it's a way that a lot of people do that because they don't know where else to go, right? That was the question we asked earlier. I know there's another question here that I didn't answer. I'm trying to get back to it. It was how long has he been doing this scheme? So from what I can identify, there's a lot of people in 2020 that actually got books back, because I would start seeing comments from people like, well, I did this in 2020 and I got my books back just fine. So it really does look like my operating theory here is that in general, he was probably operating in good faith, but for the most part, because I think what he was doing is I think he was taking the money from the submissions and he was just using it as part of his operating budget for everything he would do, buying comics, expanding. I know the store was renovated at one point. Actually, Tinfoil Hat Nick, if you're in here, can you confirm for me a little bit about that? There was a renovation that happened on the store, right? Like, was it a substantial renovation? I don't know the levels to which it was renovated, but that cost money. So I think he was taking this money. I think he was spending it on whatever he wanted. Again, could be for the business, sure, but that's not how you're supposed to do it. You're not supposed to take, let's say a customer gives you $300 for a service that you're going to turn around and, let's say it's for a pre-order. You give me $300 to pre-order something, and then I don't, I order the product and I order it late and it doesn't come on time and all this stuff. And in the meantime, I take your $300 and I just use it for whatever I want. No, you should be holding that $300 so that it's ready and available for when the charge processes, or you need to eventually pay for the product when it comes in. If you're on a rolling 30 or whatever the method is for payment, that money should be available, and you should be using your profits. So like if you charge that $300 and your actual cost was $260, your $40 in profits you should have spent, not the $260. So that's just kind of where I'm at with that. But I think that he basically was doing that. And then, so what happened is CGC hit that time where you weren't getting books back in 8 weeks, right? And that's real. That's very real. CGC kind of overnight started their turnaround time, started creeping up and up and up and up and up to the point where it did get out to, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 months. And in some cases, 9, 10 months, a year. Those were more often seen with things like magazine submissions or value tier submissions back in the day. They weren't really seen with moderns. I want to say moderns, I think the most people really were affected were about 8 months on average. And sure, there are exceptions both ways. CJ says, I'm pretty confident CGC legally can only return the books to Doug, who actually submitted them. They can get sued by Doug if they return it to theirs, and he actually comes up with the money. Yeah, and Wilbert's kind of saying the same thing. Honestly, CGC has probably figured out that they really overstepped their authority and they can't just take matters into their own hands. I kind of have my suspicions about both of those comments. I do also wonder about if they can, prove he acted in bad faith or something. Maybe they can just get the money from him that they're trying to get and then submit books. Look, I'm a realist. I'm a pragmatist here. I will tell you that I understand there's probably those reasons are probably why I can't get hold of anybody at CGC, because they probably don't want to or can't talk about it, but I'm not going to stop trying. So, what was the latest response release communication from Hotshot? Let me see if I can pull that up for you. I wish I was Joe Rogan. Jamie, pull that up. I will show you that here. Yeah. Rossity Adventures. So CGC has, they've 86'd him. They stopped him from doing business with them. He's no longer allowed to have an account with them. So that part is accurate. Okay, so here is Hotshot's Instagram. And then here is their latest post. Make sure, yeah, you guys can see that. This is from 7 days ago. So it was the day before the court date. My math adds up. Attention valued customers. We have some exciting news to share. Celebration emoji. As of last Saturday, we have successfully reached the 25% milestone in setting our outstanding payments with CGC. This was the revised amount that they said they would accept in order to begin shipping comics to us after they inexplicably altered our first arrangement. Now we're calling on the power of our amazing customers to help take us to the next step. We're hopeful that at CGC Comics tagged will honor our second agreement and resume shipping the much awaited graded comic books directly to our store and consequently right into your hands. 25% represents about 24 boxes of 25 comics each, and we'd love to start shipping them out right now. If you'd like your orders processed now, give CGC a ring or send them an email letting them know this. Other various emojis. Your support has been incredible throughout this challenging time, and we cannot thank you enough for your patience and understanding. We share your eagerness to have these comic books delivered promptly, and we're committed to making that happen. Together, let's move forward, united by our passion for comic books, and rebuild the joy and excitement of this community. Sun emoji, star emoji. If you have any questions or want to know more about the progress, feel free to reach out to us. Stay tuned for further updates, and thank you for being a part of our journey. We're looking forward to serving you with the finest graded comic book soon. Now, here's something interesting. A lot of people that have been following Doug and Hotshot point out that doesn't sound like Doug. And it doesn't read like Doug's writing. And it doesn't, I mean, you're getting a little bit in tinfoil hat territory here, I'll admit. But all the emojis, that's not been how he's like. Here's an older post. Here's an older post. An older post. An older post. That's not been his pattern. That's not been how he has generally corresponded with people. So that is interesting. It's a great question. Let me get back to where we were at in chat here. Legally, so I thought, yeah, we got that one. He basically was paying for expenses using the funds on the pre-orders, hoping to cover. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's pretty textbook if everybody's right about what happened, which sounds like they are, but we'll see. Peter's eventually going to get pissed. Agreed. The North Store was turned from an auto parts store. Sorry, into a comic shop, and it was done fast. I know he installed a brand new floor up there and in the card shop, so that's not going to be cheap. He may be charged criminally for fraud or misappropriation of property. He is using the money for other purposes than what it was intended. Agreed. From our interpretation of what we can see from the outside, apparently. Tinfoil Hat Nick says, remember, CGC was bought by BlackRock while all this was going on as well. Those guys definitely aren't going to let bad press come into play. Well, going to disagree with you on that one, Nick. BlackRock and bad press go hand in hand, unfortunately. It's entirely possible, Comic Journey. It's entirely possible. Hey, what's up? Mortal Biggie Shack in the house. That's just the prepaid, pre-graded stuff. Those of us who sent off old books are screwed. Yeah, that's a good point. He'll almost never get charged with a crime. Look at Brad's story. When he tried to get a criminal complaint filed, they blew him off and sent him to civil court. Stuff like this is like Wilbert. You're probably 100% right about that. Maybe CGC could sue him for the balance of what they're looking for. Yeah, that's interesting, right? Like, so there's been some talk from him that he's working with a woman, which, look, there is a long pattern in history of Doug and his relationship with women that I will say is not pleasant. And I am being very nice when I say that. Yeah, he says it here in this post. Am I showing that? Yeah. That said, this is from July 19th. That said, we hired a local woman who sells things for others to consign the products that we are liquidating as a result of combining the last of our two stores and as a result of having way too much stuff. Because she has no place to store 2,000 square feet of comic merchandise or the ability to ship hundreds of items per week, we sent her photos of what we are selling, how many we have, and then as products sell, she forwards us the customer addresses and we pack and ship the items. If she were doing the shipping, it would cost us significantly more as well. So we get a break on her usual rate, which obviously we can use right now. We ask that you not harass her. She's been doing a phenomenal job given the amount of product we have to sell, and it's been an excellent arrangement that allows us to raise funds to pay CGC for the 2,500 or so comics they still have for us. Which, if you do the math there, I don't know. I'm not savvy enough to do that in my head. So let's see, 2,500 times, let's say $25 each. Yeah, that'd be $62,000. So that's probably in the ballpark. You know, they might have given him a break, just saying like, pay us what you can. I could also see that being possible. So maybe that is about right. 2,500 comics or so. Also in the photo, you will notice that some comics are in bags. Those are partial orders waiting for the rest of the comics in an order to ship out for a customer. Like if you ordered 5 at once. Until we get all of them, the rest hang out right there. That said, we are still making regular payments to CGC, and hopefully they will start shipping us comics very soon. Have a terrific day. Thanks for hanging out there through all the delays. So also in the photo, you will see that some comics are in bags. Those are partial orders. So are the ones not in bags, which is everything on the left here, orders that he could fulfill? Like by his own logic there, that doesn't make a lot of sense. But I don't know who this woman is. There is a second. Yeah. you're faster than me, but not with the delay. No, I appreciate it. I had to pull up my calculator too. So there is a second account on eBay, and this is something I'll cover in my follow-up video. You guys are just getting kind of some bonus time here. There is a second eBay account that we can clearly tell is Asheville, Doug, whoever you want to call, because there's photos that are obviously taken from inside the store, and that's from employees that have helped me out with that, by being able to identify like, hey, that was clearly taken in Asheville. And you look at the reviews, they match up with the style of reviews that you would usually see with Hotshot. So it's pretty fair to say. Right. Yeah, that's the other thing too, is like what when CGC sends out books, they come back in like a cheap sleeve, right, to protect it from scuffing, which still doesn't help sometimes, CGC. But anyways, they do. So I don't know. Those bags look different to me than the ones that CGC sends, but it's kind of hard to say from that photo. But it's weird. It's weird. Right, you are, Nick. That should be inventory of his own if the bags are indeed partial orders. Right. So but if they're inventory of his own, it's a very strange thing. Like, I question whether or not they're his own. Let's put it that way. BlackRock might have a bad reputation with bad press, but they also have a reputation for having savage attorneys that will not mess around. Yeah, and that might be one of our saving graces here in the situation for the victims that are dealing with this. Only the best for those cats. They need fresh, clean floors to piss on. Damn straight. Wonder what scam he's preparing to execute once he declares bankruptcy. I bet he'll find some chick to convince into making a shell corporation just to start all over again. Yeah, and you know, I'm just being honest. There's been a history of him, you know, using women, going back to 2003 to conduct some of these scams. So I'm going to show you something else here, kind of give you some previews on what I'll be talking about in a follow-up video. Not everything, but again, I'm just a little bit of bonus time. I think that's the wrong account. I'm looking for the other Asheville account. Oh, he might have removed some stuff. Let's see if I can find it here. I have screenshots locally, but I'm not going to dig through those. Yeah, there was a Funko Pop where he was talking about submitting it. Interesting. But I will point out. So this is Asheville Card Shop, which is the physical location he's currently operating out of, and the business he's acting out. He's currently trying to, you know, act under. From what I understand, I can't personally verify this. I believe his Diamond and Lunar accounts were both suspended as well. So I don't think he's really actively operating in comic books unless he's picking up those comic books somewhere else. So this post from 3 days ago, just pulled from 2023 Topps Chrome Rookie of the Year, and it's off to PSA we go. So, I wonder if anybody has submitted. Oh, there's one of the cats right there. There we go. Like, only the best floors for that cat, right? Look, it's a weird situation, for sure. And I will continue to follow it. I will do a follow-up video for everybody. Oh man. Now we're getting to the real tinfoil hat territory. Yeah, that's it. That's what I'm saying, Wilbert. Like, where is this guy, when you say clown, getting the money to ship comics? Until I see IG posts of peeps getting books, I won't hold my breath. Anyone really think he's got a few grand put back? Yeah, think about that. If he got even 25% of the books back, that's what, like 600 books, give or take. Sending 600 books back out to people. You guys, if you sell comic books, if you buy slabs, it costs a lot of money to ship slabs. That's a ton. And again, there's no revenue coming for him for shipping out those books, except for like maybe long term. You could say, like, if he somehow ships out every book to every person that was affected, which, by the way, awesome. That's the best case scenario. I that would be great if that happened. If he's somehow able to do that, you could say maybe he redeems his reputation partially, right? And he's able to turn a profit very long term. But if he's living in a store, how does he do that? How does he afford to do that? I just don't see it happening. Tinfoil Hat Nick, again, an employee, ex-employee. I should have clarified that earlier. Ex-employee at Hotshot says, I did a lot of shipping of those orders every day. They stay in the bags until we would do a quick inspection, and right back in they go. They stay in the bags until we would do a quick inspection. Interesting. He bounced checks all the time, including staff paychecks. I feel that for people that have been swindled by this guy, hopefully it sparks a movement to have customers request shops, third-party submitters create contract. And that's a good point. It's something that I talked about in one of my videos, or I think I talked about in a stream where this came up. It'd be nice for CGC to have a program that had like trusted submitters, like a verified vendor kind of a thing, where you had more input, like, you could basically put your name on the order or something like that for shops that are really reputable and really, there are shops out there that do this and they're not trying to screw people over. I don't want to understate that enough. There is absolutely shops out there that are doing legitimate business like this. You just have to be extremely careful as a customer to not hand over your stuff or your money to people that aren't going to act in good faith. But it would be great to have kind of an extra level of verification on top of that, right? I get the impression that Doug just might be an asshole. Have we completely dismissed that theory? Certainly a lot of evidence stacking up in that department. Yep, I agree. At this point, does this guy even have any incentive to send anything back? I think I just talked about that. Somewhat. You could argue somewhat, but again, it's going to be extremely expensive. So we're going completely into speculation territory here. This is just me. What is the goal of him trying to get these books back? And I'll let you, my intelligent and wonderful audience, think of the answer for that yourself. If it's going to cost him so much money to send these books back, what is he going to do with them if he gets them back? I'll let you fill in the blank. GT Key Comic in the house says, Bronze Age nerd, no offense to the submitters, but this guy is broke and almost homeless. When will everyone accept that their books and money are both gone? Well, and that's the thing. the reason that I'm not pushing the shop and the money side of this so much, I'm pushing the CGC side of it, because at one point they were out there saying that they'll ship the books back to customers. I'd like to hope that that is somehow still on the table. It may not be, but some of those people can definitely get their books back. And you know what? Immortal Biggie Shack nailed it. He's gonna fuck those books. That's what's gonna happen. He's gonna fuck them, guys. Okay, but you mean quick inspection to check for cracks in the slabs or chips before mailing them to customers, or what? Because that's the other thing. Tons and tons of customers that did get slabs said they were scuffed, chipped, cracked in ways that are I bought a lot of CGC books. Scuffing is somewhat common, but the level of books that I see people get from Hotshot, they're way more scuffed than average, way more like scratched up. So that is interesting. That is a problem between you and your phone. Yeah, sorry, I was trying to remember that comment. Somebody pointed out that that's an outstanding idea, and I think it really is it's a good point. Hopefully CGC is learning from this and willing to adapt. That's my goal with this, is to try to improve this process, spread the word, get people aware that these kind of things are out there, and especially get all those people that haven't been able to submit a form yet, or they didn't know. I am still to this day getting messages from people saying, oh, thanks, I didn't know that CGC was doing anything about this, and I'm going to submit a form to them now. I really hope something positive comes from that at some point down the road, but it's really touching to know that people are still learning from the videos I made. Electric Tech says, in one of your prior vids, I got a affected Texas accent here. I didn't understand why someone would use a third party. I know that's not Texas. I'm sorry. I'll stop being offensive to all Texans. But I didn't understand why someone would use a third party. But hearing that he had a big collection and just wanted to get it done, I think I would have done the same thing. Yeah, exactly. If you have a bunch of big books, you don't really know what to do. You're just like, I should probably grade these. They go for more money if I go to sell them. I completely agree. I recommend doing it yourself. That's what I did. For those that don't know, that's actually a huge part of why this channel started. Is I wanted to talk about comic books, and the first real lens I used is I'm going to grade some of my childhood comic books, but I don't know how to do that. I've never done that before. I don't know the ins and outs. I don't know about pressing. And so that if you go back and watch some of the early content on this channel, it's about me showing off pictures of the books and this is what I think it'll get in the process, and doing the unboxings when they came back. Kingdom Comics in the house. Hopefully CGC has a list of customers of this guy. So if they are sent back, they can also notify the customers. That would be nice. Now, I will say something I did not address previously. There's a customer in the group that I'm in that had part of their order shipped, and I'm doing this from memory, but it was a partial order shipping out of the blue while all this stuff was going on, which was really surprising. But it was a book that also was old. It had probably been graded and in the store before any of this happened. And it was a little surprising to see that order shipped out even partially, because why? If you're acting not in good faith, I can only imagine it was to show, somebody posting that they got their books from Hotshot. Maybe it's interesting. There are some things here that don't really make a ton of sense to me, but sometimes that's just how it works. There is no list. There is for sure a list, Tinfoil Hat Nick. Even in fact, here I'll actually pull that up, because that's a good point. Oh, that is so hard to read. Yeah. Okay. Here's what I'm looking for. I know that's kind of hard to read, and zooming in doesn't really make it bigger on Instagram. But anyways, at least not on my setup here. This is from Stuart Lurie, Stuart Lurie, who is the general counsel for CGC. This is an email ostensibly sent from him to Doug, saying, Doug, thanks for the time on the phone. And this post is from, this post is from July 13th. Here are two spreadsheets. The first is a roll-up of what we have in-house from you. The second is a list of claims from your customers that we've received so far. We are going to pull the books listed in the second spreadsheet and organize them by customer. Our plan would be then to send them to you so you can satisfy these orders first. We need your word on this. Unfortunately, I don't know if that's the end of the message. It's cut off on the post. And then the next line is, please don't issue any more public statements until we can collaborate on wording. Thanks, Stu, which, by the way, he released this in a public statement, which, I mean, maybe he got permission to, I don't know, after the fact. But so there's no list on the Asheville Hotshot side. You're probably right about that, Nick. But there is a list at CGC that's being compiled, which is why I'm urging everyone to submit the claim forms. At some point, hopefully that'll help you get your books back if there's any chance. If they don't know, then there's no way I can imagine you're going to get your books back. Yeah, and that's part of, I don't know if you were here for the beginning of the interview, Frog Brawler, but that is part of what Brad was talking about, is that he was doing pressing with Hotshot, and he said, like, I don't think they were pressed, which is probably true, or they probably weren't pressed well. People say I talk just like that Bronze Age nerd guy. I doubt it, Tex, but we'll see. Love you, Tex. I miss the days when guys like this would get a good old-fashioned ass kicking while the public applauds the ass kicker. I thought you were gonna say uploads the video, so I was willing to go with that. Were the individual third-party submissions, or was it all bulk submission? How do folks know what books are theirs? It is a good question. So a lot of the books are these 9.8 pre-order modern submission type things, right? Like you say ASM 55, the Gleason webhead covers coming out. Oh, I don't want to buy 5 copies of that. I want to buy a pre-order 9.8. And so Hotshot would put that on their website and eBay as well. And you'd buy it. And then when the book comes in, theoretically, you'd get your book, right? So there was a lot of that. And I'm sure those were bulk submissions from Hotshot to CGC, because that's I hope they were. That's the easiest way to do it. And then or at the time, now you can do pre-screens of any amount, but it used to be you had to do pre-screens of 25. So that'd be a bulk order. And then, but also, like what Brad was saying earlier in the interview, if you go back and watch that, he just walked into the store and said, here's, 9 books, valuable books like ASM 129, ASM 300, Secret Wars 8, that kind of stuff. Wolverine #1. I want to get them graded. They probably talked about some point about pressing them, and that's like a one-off submission. No, I just wanted to make sure I got to that point about the two lists, the 2 spreadsheets. So you kind of gave me a segue. It is interesting that supposedly Doug had one, but you never saw it. Anyways, guys, I kind of gave you some bonus time here because I do want to make sure we address the questions that people had. If you have any more, I'm going to kind of wind down here at the end. If you have any more, shoot them out there and I'll answer them. I don't have a problem doing that. But I did want to do some announcements here kind of near the end. If I see questions come through, I'll answer them or try to address them at least. I'm going to work on my top 5 not to buy video for this week tonight. It's kind of you can tell because I'm streaming in the middle of the day. I've kind of had some free time freed up for me, and I will have that video out tomorrow. I need to do a stream with you guys on the Discord server that are channel members. It's something we try to do every once in a while. I've been neglecting that. It is due to personal reasons, basically. but I do need to do that with you. So if you have a movie you want to watch at this point, just message me what the movie is, and we'll, if I get 1 or 2 people asking the same movie, we'll watch it. Otherwise, sometime this weekend, like Thursday, maybe, would be the only weekday that might work. Maybe Saturday. Saturday is probably the day. We'll try to do something on the Discord where we watch a movie and do a movie watch along. I know I owe you guys that. So did Brad get an invoice? Because I just heard it was just emails. Yeah, so he did not get an itemized receipt in the store. He did do an email exchange with Doug. It's been a while since I've seen his emails. I can't remember if I think Brad may have been smart. I think he might have included which books he was waiting for in one of his emails, and then got Doug to respond to that. So it kind of gave Doug a chance to be like, I didn't get those books. What are you talking about? Or whatever, right? I think he was one of those customers that did that. I've seen so many emails from customers and stuff. It kind of blurs together. But yeah, I agree with that. That's kind of one of those lessons learned kind of a things, right? The courts need to step in and get the scammers' submissions records to CGC. This identifies books to customers. Then give the customers the option to pay CGC for grading service. That would be awesome. But even if they just paid for shipping, or even if they just were able to claim their stuff. Well, you know what? I actually don't see it popping up on any of the hot lists right now, Comic Journey. So I only go off the hot list that I follow. So yeah. But yeah, so I owe you guys a stream. I owe you that video. Sorry it's taken a while to get it out. I did have some things come up, like the opportunity to interview Sarah Frazetta. That is on the channel right now if you want to hear my conversation with Sarah Frazetta. We talked on a live stream yesterday. If you're a G.I. Joe fan at all, do me a favor. I never say stuff like this. Go watch my G.I. Joe video that I made for Cobra Convergence. YouTube does this thing where if I'm a comic book channel and I talk mostly about comic book, what to buy, what not to buy, or news or something like that. If I then release a video that's kind of like a comic book history or top 5 characters kind of thing, the algorithm just doesn't serve that up to my people the same way. Because a lot of you that subscribe are probably like, that's not the kind of video I usually watch. If you want to watch a video about G.I. Joe, if you want to see me do the kind of content that I'm going to be moving more towards, where I talk about things like comic book history, comic book characters, reviewing stories, that's the kind of content that I am moving towards. I'm not going to quit doing all the things that I do necessarily, but I am going to focus on stuff that is more interesting to me, that I have more passion on, that I can work on. Videos that are going to be more polished, more edited, and more presented than the stuff I usually do even. I'm going to do that. So if you guys are able to watch that video to kind of help it out, I would appreciate that. That would be really awesome. But yeah, we have more great content coming for sure. I appreciate everybody's support, everybody watching. Channel members, I did have the winner drawn for July's prize package, and that prize is being shipped out to them tomorrow. And they're going to get their books. If you aren't familiar, if you are a channel member, you can get free comic books every month. I do a drawing. You get access to special emojis in chat, a channel members only area on my Discord. My Discord is free to join if you just want to join as a basic member. And there's some other discounts too. You can get discount with comic book pressing from a comic shop that I trust, and some other stuff like that too. So yeah, if you're interested in that, feel free to become a channel member if you want. And in the meantime, I'll catch you in the next video. 100%, man, 100%. Thanks to all the people, like the people that were affected, the customers, the employees that have reached out to me to kind of help, keep me informed about this. And stay tuned for that update video. We'll have that coming out, and probably early next week. And hopefully we have good information and good news by then. All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. I'm going to end the show. Hope everybody has a great night and have a wonderful Tuesday. I'll catch you later, and have a good night.